If you haven't heard of the Bilderbergers, it's for one reason only. They haven't wanted you to. At their annual closed-door meetings, no outsiders are allowed even close to the building. Here are gathered the most powerful individuals of the Western world, united regularly at club meetings. Yet nothing is reported by the New York Times, the Washington Post, or the LA Times.
What really fascinates me is the complete blackout in the American press. For more than 20 years, I've gone down to the press club every day. I check the wires in their library, mingle with other paper boys, and I asked them the question many times, why, when if 120 film stars or 120 NFL football players met behind locked and guarded doors in a remote location for 3 days, you'd try very hard to penetrate and find out what those movie stars or football players are doing. Well, I have no curiosity at all when 120 of the world's most powerful financial leaders and political leaders meet for 3 days in a remote location behind armed guards in a complete blackout. Well, I have no curiosity.
Actually, quite a bit of security, but it's discreet.
So what would happen if someone tried to sneak through the trees back there?
I don't know. I wouldn't want to try it.
What we do hear coming out of those meetings is incredible about the plans of the New World Order to consolidate power. Political power and economic power coming together at the highest level. But what I call the lapdog media, the controlled media in this country, you would think that they would be going to court, crying freedom of information, open meetings, sunshine law, and all of these things, but the silence is deafening.
Attendees at recent Bilderberg meetings have included presidential advisor George Stephanopoulos, Senator Sam Nunn, David Rockefeller, former Senator Lloyd Bentsen, and Henry Kissinger. 1 month earlier, 50 liberal groups met in Washington to discuss their opposition to international banks and economic globalization. In reaction, one of the major items on the Bilderberger agenda was the role of liberals in various organizations. Also on the docket, the separatist movement in Canada, how fragmented Canadian provinces could be absorbed into the United States. Next, the expansion of NAFTA from Alaska to Chile, to boost corporate profits by encouraging American businesses to move to Latin American countries, where the costs of labor are low and environmental laws are not enforced. Do organizations like the Bilderbergers, the Council on Foreign Relations, and the Federal Reserve pull the strings of our lives like master puppeteers? Or are such ideas merely the paranoid ravings of conspiracy theorists?
The people who call conspiracy theorists are not the conspiracy theorists themselves. We're talking about facts here. The Bilderberg Group does exist. The Federal Reserve does exist. The people who are members of the Bilderberg Group are also the people who do control the Federal Reserve. These are all facts.
David Rockefeller himself thanked the media for keeping this all hushed up. If it wouldn't have been for you, then we wouldn't have been able to pursue our interests towards internationalism. They're conspiring to eliminate the United States as we know it through something as simple as the elimination of our national identity.
Why is it the major media would deny this? Let's look at the ownership of the major media. Let's look at the roster of, say, the Bilderberg meeting. Katharine Graham owns the Washington Post. Katharine Graham has been to the Bilderbergers. Conrad Black, one of the largest media barons in Canada and Europe, has not only been to these meetings, but he has hosted the meeting just a few years ago.
Every year they meet in secret, and there is an absolute news blackout. There is never anything reported in any of those papers.
In this country, the press is seen as the fourth estate. You know, you've got the judiciary branch, the legislative branch of government, the executive branch of government. Then you're supposed to have the press keeping an eye on these three. If leaders from these three are working with other leaders around the world to determine economic policy, wars, human rights, etc., then yes, the press has a responsibility to get in there and to inform people. But just 2 years ago, I think 1997, the First Lady attended the meeting in Georgia. A few papers in Georgia picked it up, but this is the First Lady at a meeting with people who really arguably want to rule the world. Now, that should have been front page news.
Well, the fifth estate are the international bankers, and they just couldn't accomplish their goals without being to control the electronic media. Now, what they hate more than anything else is this outbreak amongst the internet, cable TV, radio talk shows. That's what they can't control. They need control, and without it, they aren't going to get what they want.
Of course, one person's sinister conspiracy could just be another person's private affair.
The Bilderberg is a clubby atmosphere. That's what it is, really. It's a clubby affair. By invitation only.
Now, when you see groups like Council on Foreign Relations, Bilderbergers, Trilateral Commission, you have to remember bankers work internationally, and the central banks in all countries work together, and they do this through special groups. They formed the Council on Foreign Relations at the Versailles Peace Conference after World War I. Now, many conservatives believe the CFR runs in the United States, but it only does it secondhand because the real orders come out of London first.
Decisions arrived at in secret Bilderberger meetings apparently do affect our lives as much, if not more, than the policies adopted through Democrat-Republican squabbling. When no other newspaper bothered, the tiny Washington publication, The Spotlight, single-handedly invaded the shroud obscuring these secret gatherings.
Well, by penetrating the secrecy of Bilderberg, we were able to do an advanced story on the end of the Cold War, the downfall of Maggie Thatcher, an advanced story on the Persian Gulf War, then President George Bush's reversal from his read my lips, no new taxes pledge.
The financial entities that dominate the Federal Reserve, the Bilderberg Group, are largely centered around the Rockefeller family and the Rothschild family. Names such as Chase Manhattan, Citibank, all these groups that move in the Rockefeller sphere of influence and the Rothschild sphere of influence are the glue that hold the Bilderberg elite together.
Most troubling of all is evidence that the attendees of these secret meetings may even choose our presidents.
In December of 1974, there was a major headline on the editorial page of the Atlanta Constitution that said Jimmy Carter is running for what? And the what was about this I'm running for president.
Jimmy Carter had been a one-term governor of Georgia, hardly known to the American people. He, however, had an entree into the international elite through his membership in David Rockefeller's Trilateral Commission. No one had ever heard of Jimmy Carter. I think that's fair to say. Yet, within the next several years, as he announced his presidential campaign, started moving towards a Democratic presidential nomination, he started getting a lot of favorable media coverage, particularly from media connected to the Rockefeller sphere of influence. Jimmy Carter was painted as a populist, a man of the people.
I remember when we couldn't find a microphone.
When in fact, he was moving in the highest circles of the international elite.
When we discovered that the obscure governor of Arkansas, Bill Clinton, had attended his first Bilderberg meeting in Baden-Baden, Germany in 1991, we were able to anticipate a political future for the young man.
When I discovered in 1991 that Bill Clinton had attended the Bilderberg meeting, I was able to predict that he would be the candidate for the presidency of the Democratic Party. I didn't think he'd be elected president.
Bill Clinton, like Jimmy Carter, is a product of the Rockefeller empire. Bill Clinton has a few up on Jimmy Carter, though. Not only was Clinton a member of the Trilateral Commission, but he was also invited to become a member of the Council on Foreign Relations. He had the imprimatur of the Rockefeller and Rothschild families. The global elite have been the primary promoters of free trade precisely because of the fact that they are the ones who control the major multinational corporations. They are the ones who want to build televisions in Mexico and in impoverished third world countries and pay these people sub-minimum wages, slave wages, and then export them at gigantic profits back to the United States. But we're told by the major media in this country, which is tied in again with these international elites, that, oh, well, this is a temporary thing. It really is good for America. But it's not good for America. Look at anybody who's lost their job. Look at how their family suffers. That's the Bilderberg Group at work. That's the Trilateral Commission. That's the Federal Reserve. All these elite groups that they're benefiting, but the average American isn't.
These families have been mostly in the banking business for at least 500 years, most of them. They were in the slave trade, they were in the opium trade, because these people are not interested in 5% a year return. They want 1,000% a year return. And to get into those things, you need to get into gold, slaves, drugs. That's where the big money is.
What's wrong with an elite ordering world events? There's a lot of things wrong with that. The American people, at least, have always been told that they control their own destiny through their elected representatives. But when you find their elected representatives behind closed doors, surrounded by armed guards who will not let the general public in, and they're making decisions that affect the future of the American people and the people of the world, then there are legitimate questions as to why this elite should be able to dictate things.
The whole point of one world government is to eliminate the concept of nationalism. Now, why is eliminating nationalism bad if it would eliminate war? Well, the reason is, if old British Lord Acton's axiom, that is, absolute power tends to corrupt absolutely.
If you could print $1 billion tomorrow, well, you could be a master of the universe. But you can't, because they have the monopoly. As long as they can print the money, as long as they can buy the New York Times, the Washington Post, congressmen, senators, presidents, then you can't compete against them. What have you got to offer?
If you have relatively few people governing your government, you don't have a democratic government, do you? You've got a secret cabal here who is governing the United States. And not just the United States, but the governments of England and France, Germany, all the European countries, less influence in Japan, but quite a bit there too. So it's a conspiracy against the people of the United States and of the Western world. What would you call it?
Are the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds and the people in their sphere of influence the masters of the universe? Let's put it this way, they want to be the masters of the universe, but there are a lot of people who don't want them to be.
They create money out of nothing. What a scam. They have so much money, they don't care about money. All they care about is power. All they care about is being able to control the political situation so it goes their way. But they still have not been able to succeed in America because of the wealth and the independence and the patriotic spirit of the American middle class. That's the only thing that's holding this world from a situation of total despotism.
See, if I serve you a black cup of coffee and it's 95% coffee but 5% arsenic, it's mostly coffee, but it's going to kill you in the end. What we've been doing is we've been getting a truth-error mixture of events going on around the world. Enough truth to make it seem plausible, but enough error to get you off course. A lot of it has to do with our educational systems, where we've been dumbing our kids down. And when you dumb them down, it's the cruelest form of censorship, because most of this current generation can't even read the books that these guys would be scared of.
Closed-door meeting of fellow internationalists, billionaire and former CFR chairman David Rockefeller praised his media allies, but his confidence that his words would not leave the room was later broken.
We are grateful to the Washington Post, the New York Times, Time Magazine, and other publications whose directors have attended our meetings and restricted their promises of discretion for almost 40 years. It would have been impossible for us to develop our plan for the world if we had been subject to the bright lights of publicity. But the world is now more sophisticated and prepared to march toward a world government.
Just how rich and powerful is Lord Evelyn Rothschild? Historically, the Rothschild family wealth was hidden in underground vaults. The Rothschilds' secret financial records were never audited and never accounted for. Their family commissioned biographies give the illusion that their family fortune has dwindled, but researchers estimate their wealth at close to $500 trillion, more than half the wealth of the entire world. Besides their many castles, palace mansions, wineries, racehorses, and exotic resorts, The Rothschilds bought Reuters in the 1800s. Reuters then bought the Associated Press, which selects and delivers the same news stories to the entire world, day after day. They have controlling interest in 3 major television networks and easily avoid media attention since they own it. Until recently, they owned and operated England's Royal Mint and continue to be the gold agent for the Bank of England, which they also direct. They control the LBMA, London Bullion Market Association, where 30 to 42 million ounces of gold worth over $11 billion are traded daily. The Rothschilds earn millions weekly just on transaction fees alone. They also fix the world price of gold on a daily basis and profit from its ups and downs. Over the centuries, the Rothschilds have amassed trillions of dollars worth of gold bullion in their subterranean vaults and have cornered the world's gold supply. They own controlling interest in the world's largest oil company, Royal Dutch Shell. They operate phony charities and offshore banking services where the wealth of the black nobility and the Vatican is hidden in secret accounts at Rothschild Swiss banks, trusts, and holding companies. Although Evelyn Rothschild looks like a harmless gray-haired old man, make no mistake about it, Rothschild and his ancestors have handpicked presidents, crashed stock markets, bankrupted nations, orchestrated wars, and sponsored the mass murder and impoverishment of millions. The wealth hoarded by this one family alone could feed, clothe, and shelter every human being on earth. How did Evelyn Rothschild become the filthy rich Grand Vizier to Queen Elizabeth II and godfather of the black nobility? By birth, Evelyn Rothschild is the great-great-great-grandson of Mayer Rothschild and is passing the godfathership down to David de Rothschild.
Eric, can you be specific about when you met Rockefeller, how it happened in these discussions?
I met Rockefeller through a female attorney I knew who called me up one day and said, one of the Rockefellers would like to meet you. I made a video called Mad as Hell, and he'd seen the video and wanted to meet me and knew I was running for governor of Nevada. So sure, I'd love to meet him. And I met him and I liked him, and he was a very, very smart man. And we used to talk and share ideas and thoughts. And he's the one who told me 11 months before 9/11 ever happened that there was going to be an event. Never told me what the event was going to be, but there was going to be an event. And out of that event, we would invade Afghanistan to run pipelines from the Caspian Sea. We were going to invade Iraq, you know, to take over the oil fields, establish a base in the Middle East, and make it all part of the New World Order. And we'd go after Chavez in Venezuela. And sure enough, later 9/11 happened, and I remember he was telling me how how you're gonna see soldiers looking in caves for people in Afghanistan and Pakistan and all these places, and there's gonna be this war on terror, of which there's no real enemy. And the whole thing is a giant hoax, you know, but it's a way for the government to take over the American people.
He told you it was going to be a hoax.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. There's no question. He says, there's going to be war on terror, and he's laughing. Who are we fighting? I mean, why do you think 9/11 happened, and then nothing's happened since then? Do you think that our security is so great here that these people who pulled off 9/11 were able to, can't knock down another plane? Come on, it's ridiculous. 9/11 was done by people in our own government, our own banking system, to perpetuate the fear of the American people into subordinating themselves to anything the government wants them to do. That's what it's about, and to create this war, this endless war on terror. And that's why and that was the first lie. And the next lie was going into Iraq, you know, to get Saddam Hussein out with his weapons of mass destruction. That was the next lie.
Now, specifically, this was a little over 6 years ago.
This was
11 months before 9/11.
Yeah.
And Nick Rockefeller, who's a lawyer, he's become your friend over the previous years, and he's saying to you that there's going to be this big event, and then out of that we're going to have a war on terror, and it's just going to go on and on.
Right. And endless war on terror without any real enemy. Then you can never define a winner.
And did he say that it's going to be perfect because you can't define an enemy? It just goes
Yeah,
on?
because you can't define a winner. There's no winner going to beat, so it goes on and on forever. And they can do whatever they want. They scare the hell out of the American public. Look, this whole war on terror is a fraud. It's a farce. It's very difficult to say it out loud because people are intimidated against saying it. Because if you say it, they want to make you into a nutcase. But the truth has to come out. That's why I'm doing this interview. The fact of the matter happens to be that the whole war on terror is a fraud. It's a farce. Then there's a war going on in Iraq because we invaded Iraq. And people over there fighting, you know. But the war on terror, that's a joke.
What about the candidate Ron Paul, who's talking about bringing the powers of the Federal Reserve back to the U.S. government, presidential control or control of Congress?
I haven't read about that. Is that an issue?
Well, he's one of the Republican.
He's a Republican candidate, and that's what he's publicly calling for. So,
I would not look upon that as one of the great issues that needs to be addressed at this time.